Tonight on Reporting Scotland. On the ropes over Brexit, the SNP accused the Conservative government at Westminster of chaos and confusion. Calls for improvement in the treatment for people living with more than one serious illness. We speak to the climber who owes his life to a drone after he fell on one of the world's highest mountains.
I just fell vertically, and I have no idea how far, and I went unconscious. I don't even remember the landing.
Also on the programme, as the stars gather for the Open Championship at Carnoustie, we look at the course's place in the history of the sport. And a taste of things to come, the young entrepreneurs who are hoping to persuade us to eat insects. Good evening. Votes on the Brexit trade bill are continuing this evening. Now, getting this bill through Parliament is key to the Prime Minister's plans to leave the EU. Well, let's go to our political correspondent, Nick Ardley at Westminster. Nick, I believe we have the result on the trade bill amendment.
We have the result of one of the votes, Jackie, which is on the medicines relationship we have with the EU after we leave. The government has lost that vote very narrowly. They're now about to vote on a really crucial amendment which could see the government forced to adopt a customs union as one of its negotiating objectives if it can't get the free trade agreement that it's aiming for by January 2019. This comes less than 24 hours after Brexiteers thought they had seized the initiative in this process. Another twist in a really astonishing week. It's all looking rather fragile around here just now. The government's carefully constructed the Brexit plan under threat from all sides. After accepting demands from Conservative Brexiteers, some now want more.
We are seeking to change policy when it comes to the Chequers plan because we've been really clear that we don't feel it delivers the Brexit that people voted for. You're in the single market in all but name, in the customs union in all but name, and still under the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. We want to come out of that, we want to change that, and you'll be seeing colleagues working really hard and constructively.
So what now? As the Prime Minister is squeezed from both sides of her own party, is there any hope left for her plan?
What we saw yesterday was a few votes and a few amendments that the government considered and accepted that would actually help and augment the Chequers plan, necessary to get it through the House of Commons, but actually makes the Chequers plan a better plan and helps us deliver a Brexit that unites the Conservative Party and is good in the national interest of the country.
The government is adamant the plan thrashed out at Chequers isn't dead, but at the very least it's on life support. And that means there's a real sense of confusion and uncertainty here about what happens next. Some think that decision should rest with you.
It was a vote, a very narrow vote to leave. The people deserve the right to have the final say on the deal. Is it what they actually want? And we are going to continue to demand that they get that and that we get the best deal possible.
And another battle tonight. This time it's pro-EU MPs trying to ensure the government will push for a customs union if it can't get the free trade deal it wants.
It might look like chaos and mayhem from the outside, and believe me, it's chaos and mayhem on the inside as well. But tonight's vote's really important. It's important that Parliament takes a stand and we say no to a hard Tory Brexit.
It's coming to the stage where Labour will be likely to oppose this farce of a proposal from the government in October, and at that stage it's Parliament to decide what the next stage is going to be, and I think we can't take anything off the table at that stage, whether it could be another general election or indeed another referendum. We can't take anything off the table at this stage. And
that's not all. The Electoral Commission now says the main Leave campaign broke spending rules. It's been referred to the police. The campaign in London accused the election watchdog of bias and basing its findings on conspiracy theories.
That's one of the main stories.
The man who led the campaign in Scotland isn't so sure.
If there's other, stages still to go through, like the courts, for example, then, justice will take its course. But you do not attack the people whose job has been given by Parliament to hold these campaigns to account.
Building it all up to here hasn't been easy, but the foundations of Theresa May's plan look vulnerable, and some fear there's a real prospect it could all come crashing down. Nick Eardley reporting Scotland, Westminster. Parliament resembles something of a house of horrors for the government just now. It feels like there's another fright for Theresa May around every corner. She had hoped Parliament would break up tomorrow, a few days early, but such is the opposition to that in Parliament, it now looks increasingly unlikely that will happen. Since we've been on air, one well-placed MP has told me they now think there's a good chance they will win that vote tonight, tying the government to a customs union if it doesn't get the free trade agreement it wants. A quite remarkable turn of events in what's been a remarkable period in British politics.
Thank you very much for that, Nick. And we will try to bring you that vote if it happens while we're on air. 9 in 10 patients with heart conditions in Scotland live with other long-term illnesses. Well, now the British Heart Foundation is calling for urgent improvements in research and treatment for people living with more than one serious illness. Our health correspondent Lisa Summers reports.
So I was living this high-pressure life of a financial lawyer, lots of late nights, lots of working weekends.
Ricky Monaghan-Brown had what seemed like a dream job working on Park Avenue in New York, but then a major scare.
I went to bed and shortly thereafter I had this tingling in my left arm. My first instinct was that I might be having a heart attack because my father had had a couple of heart attacks.
Ricky wasn't having a heart attack, but a stroke.
Very shortly thereafter, an ambulance was taking the unconscious me into the local hospital with a 1 in 20 chance of what they would call a good outcome.
Ricky has made an incredible recovery after his stroke, but he also has to manage a series of other conditions: high blood pressure, brain aneurysms and a history of cardiovascular disease.
These were not things that I was thinking about. I was just getting on with living my life, you know.
Heart disease, stroke, vascular dementia and diabetes are all connected.
We know that heart disease is one of the leading causes of death in Scotland, and figures show that there's been a 4-fold increase in the number of people who have heart conditions that also live with at least another 4 serious illnesses. Now, some of that can be put down to lifestyle choices or an ageing population, but the British Heart Foundation says such a dramatic increase can't be put down to those factors alone.
People need to realise your heart and your circulatory system is something that you need to keep in good order. You need to work with your GP and your practice nurse to make sure that you're getting the best possible treatment. You need to do what you can to keep yourself as healthy as possible. But also the government and the NHS need to help with this as well.
The charity is funding this research project at Glasgow University. It's looking at multimorbidity, where patients live with numerous conditions.
They come to us with heart disease and diabetes and high cholesterol and hypertension. And so we have to rethink the way we are doing research. We need to understand why is it that we're having this clustering, if you like, of chronic diseases. And as I said, if we can understand better from a research point of view why this is happening, and if indeed there are common mechanisms, that will help us.
Ricky is now living a less stressful life with his family in Edinburgh. He's writing a book about his experiences. Lisa Summers, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
The number of people seeking work in Scotland has risen according to the latest employment figures, but growth in workers' pay has slowed to its weakest rate in 6 months. Well, let's get an update on all the figures from our business correspondent, David Henderson.
Jackie, the number of people in work and looking for a job hasn't changed much this month. There's the total. 120,000 people across Scotland, and the jobless rate is just about the same as for the UK as a whole. But dig down through these figures and you'll find a dramatic long-term change. Let's look at the number of young people who are out of work in Scotland. Over the last 4 years, it's fallen again and again and again. The total is less than half of what it used to be. Now, the number of young people in a job has barely changed, so that means more are ending up in training and education. As we've been finding out, the world of work can be a tough place for a school leaver. I've been hearing from Kyle Scott, who left school at 17.
I feel like I've got lucky in a sense because I made it to university and I'm still going. Most people are working 2-3 jobs at the same time at my age, and it's scary. Like, how are we meant to progress with our life if we're stuck in dead-end jobs, but we can't progress with education because it's so hard to do so. Like, it's like we're backed up into a corner and we have no clue where we're going to go from it. And you're not really told the realities leaving school either. I was working beyond health and safety laws, and I couldn't challenge that because I thought that was perfectly fine. Like, I was working things like 20-hour shifts thinking that's okay because I'm getting a good wage at the end of it and I would accept it. And it wasn't until I was at 21, 22, my pal says, okay, well, that's really illegal. But that was the reality. It's not about how many young people don't work, it's the conditions that they face that's the biggest factor. You might think, oh, youth unemployment is so low, we're doing so well to support our youth. No, look, we're in 0-hour contracts, we're in precarious work. Our mental health's taking a massive impact because of this. We can't live with a plan, we can't live with a balance, we can't look ahead to the future. Everything has to be looked at. So what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen the next day? That's the level of anxiety that 19 and 20-year-olds, young people in general, should never have to deal with. But that's the reality of these working conditions that we're under.
So, for Kyle Scott and many like him, education is a pathway towards a future career in a UK workforce of more than 32 million people. That's the highest employment rate on record. But there's little sign this is helping take-home pay to rise. Real wages are still stagnant. That's bad for growth in the economy, and it means interest rates could stay low for longer. Jackie.
David, thank you. A strike by workers at Aberdeen Airport this Friday is back on. Around 170 security and operations staff, who are members of the Unite union, have rejected a revised pay offer. They want parity with a 3% offer to workers at Glasgow Airport, which is owned by the same company. As well as the 24-hour stoppage on Friday, 2 other strike dates have been announced for next month. A climber from Aberdeenshire, feared dead on one of the world's highest mountains, was rescued after he was spotted by a drone. Rick Allen was in the Himalayas attempting a solo climb when he fell and hit his head. He was knocked unconscious and spent more than 36 hours waiting to be rescued. Rebecca Curran has been to meet him.
I just fell vertically. And I've no idea how far. And I went unconscious. I don't even remember the landing.
There's no doubt about it. Rick Allen is lucky to be alive. He fell and knocked himself unconscious after reaching this 26,000-foot Broad Peak summit in the Himalayas.
I remember waking up in a heap thinking, this is not good. And so I went around and pinched my legs one at a time, and they all seemed to be all right. And I was intact, basically. There was a lot of blood. It was coming out of my nose, and it was coming from the cut above my right eye.
Rick and his friend Sandy from Newton Moor had been climbing together before Rick decided to go for the summit alone. He was missing for 36 hours before a drone came to the rescue.
I thought, I need to make a sign to this drone, but I've got both hands in mitts, so you can't make much of a sign when your hands are in mitts. So I spoke to it. I had no idea whether it had a microphone on it. In fact, it didn't. So he had no way of knowing what I was saying. And I said something like, I'm trying to get to Camp 3, you know, as if you can talk to a drone.
Rick was eventually rescued by a helicopter and arrived home at the weekend. But it's not his first brush with drama. In 2012, he and Sandy completed the longest unclimbed ridge in the Himalayas. Rick came home starving and with frostbite after running out of food. He's now recovering from freshly frostbitten toes, but despite his ordeal, is planning his next adventure. Rebecca Curran, reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
The Chief Executive of Creative Scotland, the public body which represents the creative industries, has resigned. It follows a row over funding which saw more than 20 organisations lose their grants. Well, let's speak to our arts correspondent Pauline McLeod. And it would appear, Pauline, that Janet Archer's resignation hasn't really surprised.
Not at all. It's not so much a question of if, but when. We've been waiting for this for a while. Many people thought she might have resigned after the initial funding row. You'll remember back in January, 21 organisations lost their funding. Children's theatre and disability theatre disproportionately affected by that. There was a U-turn. 5 of them did have their funding returned. Others weren't so lucky. And 2 of the organisations, the theatre company NVA and another company called Culture Republic, both based in Glasgow, well, they both announced that they are going to close. Then there was the parliamentary inquiry. Janet Archer told the Parliament she was sorry that the funding process was being that the funding process had happened in the way it had. She told them it was being overhauled, and then in their final report they said that Creative Scotland had been badly damaged by the decision making, which they said fell way below the standard expected of a public body.
Thank you very much, Polly. Michelle Obama is in Edinburgh this evening to address a charity dinner. She's following in the footsteps of her husband, Barack, who was a guest speaker at the Hunter Foundation event last year. Tonight's audience will include two 14-year-old schoolgirls who won a competition to attend. Well, it's fast approaching 7:15 and a reminder of tonight's top story. MPs at Westminster are voting on potentially keeping the UK in a customs union if talks with the EU fail. And still to come, the athlete who's overcome near fatal health issues to reach the European Championships. Well, let's go back to Westminster now, where there have been that series of votes on the Brexit trade bill. We can join our political correspondent, Nick Ardley. Nick, do we have a result?
Yeah, that result in the last minute or so, Jackie, the government has won 307 votes to 301. That amendment has fallen. It would have tied the government's hands, saying that if it couldn't get a free trade agreement, then it would have to negotiate a customs union with the European Union. So a victory for the Prime Minister, but another example of just how divided Parliament is, just how divided the country is. What happens next in the next few days, still anyone's guess.
Thank you very much, Nick, for that update. Attendance is falling at traditional church services on a Sunday morning, but numbers are rising for a gathering without any God. The Sunday Assembly has lots of things you would get in church, but no religious element, doctrines or rules. Joanne Macaulay went to the gathering, which meets in Edinburgh once a month.
Well, you going to the Sunday Assembly? I am indeed. It's on the left on the floor.
The leaflets at the door invite you to come inside and celebrate life. This is the Sunday Assembly in Stockbridge in Edinburgh, where the motto is live better, help often, wonder more.
It's a secular congregation, so it's a non-religious gathering, but we do things that look a bit like church. So we sing, we have speakers, we have reflection, we have meeting each other, we have cake and coffee, and we get together once a month to celebrate life together for all those people who would like to do that but don't want to do it in church for whatever reason.
The Sunday Assembly movement was started in London in 2013 by people who liked the community which church offered but didn't believe in God. This is the first one in Scotland and it's growing.
There's a need for community in people, and I mean, modern society, people are more and more just looking at their screens. The connection to other people in some way can be spiritual. The admiration of nature can be spiritual. So, and all of this is included here.
I knew there were always some things to go by, rules of thumb.
Like church, the Sunday Assembly offers readings and food for thought, and quiet moments of reflection. There are now 45 Sunday Assemblies in 8 countries, with the same ethos and format, and no mention of religion or doctrine.
Both my husband and I were raised Catholic, but we're atheists and we're really not interested in going along to any churches, but we come here and we get a chance to sing together, to listen to poems and to listen to other people's stories and just to be inspired, really.
The Sunday Assembly hopes to expand in Scotland to offer people who don't have a faith a chance to reflect on life. Joanne Macaulay reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
A Scottish sprinter who has been speaking for the first time about a form of epilepsy that almost killed her and left her battling depression and anxiety. Beth Tobin, who represents Scotland at the upcoming European Championships, thought her athletics dream was over before it even began. Well, now she's hoping to inspire others with her story. Chris McLaughlin reports.
I can remember thinking, like, I'm gonna die, just like, almost just let it happen. I can picture my friend's face. She just looked terrified.
Aged 13 and after being diagnosed with epilepsy, Beth Tobin suffered a huge seizure at school.
I remember looking at my dad thinking, I feel like I've seen him before, but I don't know who he is. That is the scariest part, you know, not recognising your family. That it was just awful.
Her dream of becoming an athlete seemed to have gone, but 11 years later, she's the new British 200 metres champion.
Pretty even start. Beth Tobin got out very quickly. Jodie Williams not as quick as she did in the heats, but is running a very good bend. Beth Tobin trying to get back and is coming right through the middle.
This was her qualifying for next month's European Championships.
Tobin wins it! That is a new championship record.
But her battle is ongoing against flashbacks, anxiety, depression and post-traumatic stress disorder.
When I first developed it, it was so many flashbacks to the day at school, and it was physical flashbacks, so I wasn't just seeing it in my mind. It was, I could feel like my hand was doing what it did before and it wasn't, or I was like, my head's rolling back, and people would be like, no, it isn't, but I felt like it was, so it was really scary. Epilepsy, you know, there's a stigma around it, not many people speak about it. Just don't let it define you, don't let it stop you. So whether that's exams at school, musical instruments, sports, anything, everyone is different, and just be patient with it. You might not see the recovery you want straight away. Speak to your friends and family, make sure your mental health, you're doing well, and just keep going with it.
Chris McLaughlin, reporting Scotland.
Well, now the Open begins on Thursday at Carnoustie, returning for an 8th time to the Angus Links. Well, St Andrews is, of course, well known around the world as the home of golf, but less well known is the hugely important role that golfers from Carnoustie have played in the development of the sport around the world. Jane Lewis has the story.
The world's top players have already arrived in Carnoustie preparing for the Open Championship. But at the turn of the 20th century, it was the golfers of Carnoustie who took the sport around the globe.
Between roughly 1890 and 1940, more than 300 Carnoustie golfers went all over the world to take the game to places where they had just heard the word, they didn't know what it meant. Stuart Maiden was the famous one who taught Bobby Jones from the age of 6. And Bobby Jones became the greatest amateur in the history of golf, probably, thanks to Stuart Maiden from Carnoustie.
The Simpsons family golf shop has been a fixture in the town over 3 centuries, established by Bob Simpson, one of 6 successful golfing brothers. His grandson still caddies at the course today.
Stuart Maiden's was taught by my uncle, great uncle Archie, who was another of the brothers. I always like to say this, and it may be controversial, but Carnoustie did more than any other place to develop the game.
One Carnoustie family in particular made a huge mark on professional golf in the United States. At the turn of the 20th century, the 5 Smith brothers, led by elder brothers Alex and Willie, all made the arduous journey across the Atlantic in pursuit of golfing success.
Willie won the US Open in 1899, within a year of him going to America. And then Alec would win it in 1906 and 1910. And in 1910 there was a 3-man playoff, and MacDonald was playing against his brother in the playoff. The US Open, for a period of 39 years, had a Smith brother playing in it.
Golf fans at the Open this week can see more of Carnoustie's incredible history on display in the old clubhouse. On the course, that history will be added to this week. Jane Lewis, reporting Scotland.
And you can see even more of the Carnoustie story on the BBC Sport website, and the full documentary will be available on the iPlayer tomorrow. Well, from golf to cricket. Not that sort. Would you ever eat insects? 2 billion people around the world already do, and apparently they're going to become part of our everyday diet as current levels of meat eating become unsustainable. Well, that is the business case behind a new company formed by a group of students at Strathclyde University. John Beattie bravely went to have a taste.
I personally had to remove the head and the wings because I just couldn't eat as a whole piece of insects. But I mean, as soon you did it once, it's actually fine because it's just like this psychological view kind of, but it doesn't taste anything really particular, so that's fine.
When
you want to raise insects, they need less water, less land, less feed compared to any other source of protein, and have a lot of protein. So, and actually, if you consider that right now, we actually get more and more people in the world, and we have to feed them all. We were like, of course, that's a solution. So why don't we eat insects? It's just this first yuck factor, but if you overcome it, it actually makes sense. So that was the reason why we are so passionate about it, because it can actually solve problems.
The cricket powder is effectively a powder that's, I think, brought in from Canada, and they mash it up and it becomes a protein base for the cooking. So let's try it. It's just banana cake. There is no difference. There is no difference between eating this and a normal banana cake. I'll just have this.
Well, let's get the weather now from Causer.
Thank you, Jackie. Good evening. Well, today was a mix of cloud, of sunny spells, but also a few heavy showers. This is the scene sent in from one of our weather watchers, a dramatic skyline with shower clouds looming in the background over Peterhead in Aberdeenshire. And we'll continue to see some showers. Here's a recent radar and satellite image. You can see where they have been, mainly concentrated across the northeast as we head into the evening. And we'll continue to see some here for a time, again with the risk of the odd rumble of thunder. But as we head through the night, those showers will tend to fade away for most. Largely clear skies for central and southern parts of the country, and once again temperatures dipping to around 9 to 11 Celsius, a fresher night. And those showers across the northwest perhaps continuing for a time into the morning, but elsewhere it's a largely fine, dry start to the day tomorrow with some good spells of sunshine. But by the afternoon, you can see this line of showers developing across the south of the country and a few further towards the north. So if you're heading out around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you can expect showers anywhere from Galloway up across the southern uplands towards the borders. And again, these showers could be locally heavy and they come with the risk of thunder. For the central swathe of the country, largely dry here, some good spells of sunshine, some variable cloud, but some showers too across the Highlands, across the islands as well, and temperatures ranging from around 16 to 20 Celsius. So again, around average for the time of year. For the evening then, those showers across the south will continue for a time, still quite heavy in places, but tending to fade away. And for tomorrow night, it becomes largely dry with clear spells once again, and temperatures will be similar overnight, around 9 to 12 Celsius. By the time we reach Thursday then, a largely fine, dry start to the day with some spells of sunshine, but cloud will thicken across the northwest. And temperatures may be up a degree or two. We're looking at highs of around 19 to 22 or 23 Celsius. But if you're looking for some rain, well, there is some good news in the forecast. We have a weather front approaching for Thursday night into Friday, bringing some significant rainfall, especially for the northwest. And that's your forecast.
Thank you very much for that, Causer. And that's it from Reporting Scotland. Good evening.